Delighted to be joined by Jeremiah LeRoy, Buncombe County Sustainability Officer, Amber Weaver, City of Asheville Sustainability Officer, and Christine Wittmeier, Environmental Program Supervisor, Henderson County. Welcome.
Thank you.
I want to start by focusing on these local goals for renewable energy or sustainability. Let's start with the City of Asheville. What's going on there?
All the things are going on there at the City of Asheville. We've had really thoughtful city council members, and over the years since the office was created, they've thought about having policy around food policy, what we saw just most recently, as well as thinking about waste reduction efforts. We have policy around renewable energy, also carbon mitigation goals, and most recently, something that I think is very important when we're talking about sustainability is the climate emergency. And really through that climate emergency, what our office has focused on is climate justice and the work of sustainability in frontline communities.
Mm-hmm. Say just a few more words about what does the work look like?
Thank you for asking that question. I think the work looks like the exact opposite of what this room is capturing, which is predominantly white. And the work that we're doing is working with communities of color, communities and community members who don't have an opportunity to attend events like this. And partnering with, our office has partnered with a woman in our community who is also a person of color to help us really find those voices. Mm-hmm. And so that work looks a lot different than our typical government work and how we work as a government. It's uplifting those voices for those neighbors and neighborhoods to tell us what their needs are and how they're experiencing climate change, and providing recommendations to the city on what we should do to build resilience in their communities.
I'm intrigued by the way you have described that, because it doesn't sound as though the focus is on recruiting people to an already existent agenda, but rather hearing people and involving them in an evolving agenda. But I don't want to put words in your mouth, so you tell me.
I agree, and I think what we've done through the help of our IT department and through the work of looking at red line communities is to identify the wrongs that have been done in the past in Asheville, acknowledge those, and also go into those communities and listen thoughtfully on how they experience flooding, for example, mm-hmm. how they experience landslides, what it means for them to not have access to transportation because a road is closed due to flooding. How do they get to work? How do they get to the grocery store? We know also through research and data that our community members that live in the front lines typically have to take 2 buses to get to a grocery store. So the work around sustainability and what we're doing and the policies that are in place is really thinking about, yes, how are we addressing carbon mitigation? But because we're living through climate change now, how are we going to uplift these communities and community members that we care for and care about and are most greatly impacted by the things that we people of privilege are doing. And I think that's really important. And I think it's important to elevate those voices and have them lead government. It's a very interesting process, and for my type A personality, it's kind of hard sometimes to not be in charge of where things are going. But I think that I've had really great relationships here in Asheville that have helped me learn to let go and let our community members lead.
Thank you for sharing. Jeremiah, from the perspective of Buncombe County, how did you go about setting goals? What's the process? What's the advice that you have for other counties interested in following the lead?
It's a really good question, because we are very fortunate here in Buncombe County to have not only very progressive leadership, but a very active community. We have a community that elevates these issues, that cares about these issues, and frankly, that makes my job easier, right? When I have to go before my board to say, hey, I've got projects and they're important and I need the funding, most of the time I can get it because folks like you show up at those meetings and you say, as a community, we want the County Commission to care about these and to fund these projects. And not every community has that. So, one of the things that I talk to some of my colleagues around the state, and there aren't as many of us as you think, so we talk a lot. And there are a lot of sustainability officers that get together pretty regularly. And, we talk a lot about how to make this dual argument for not just the environmental benefits, but the economic benefits as well, right? So just as an example, we have a very progressive board here in Buncombe County, and that's great, but it hasn't always been that way. And even during my tenure here at Buncombe County, we've had very split board in terms of their views on climate change. But when I come to them, it's been, I guess, almost 2 years ago now, and I say, I need $10 million to put solar on as many public facilities as I possibly can. And right now we have about 40 solar projects ongoing. It's not just about, yes, we're doing things for the environment, which is great. These projects are going to save us $15 million over the next 30 years.
That's probably a return on investment people can get with.
I certainly hope so. And frankly, this was a shining moment in my career. Honestly, it's one of the few times I've ever gotten a 7-0 vote in favor of something that I was doing. And so it was wonderful to see all of the members of that particular board say, we can get behind this. And so I would say to folks that are in other communities that might be struggling, getting their leadership on board, that there's more than one way to do this. There's more than one way to make that argument.
Yeah. Christine, give us the perspective from another county, from Henderson County.
So Henderson County is just south of Buncombe, and although we haven't set any recent sustainability goals, I don't think that has prevented staff from being innovative when it comes to the environment. For example, we operate our own CNG station. We are about to pilot our first DC fast charger thanks to a grant from Department of Air Quality, the VW settlement. And we also passed our Greenway master plan in 2019. And then for me, it looks a little different than Amber and Jeremiah because my position is out of our solid waste department. And so the bulk of my work is for waste reduction, recycling, and composting, which is something that I find that we are leaders in Western North Carolina. For example, we started collecting food waste from our convenience center in 2017, and since then, we have composted 96 tons of food waste that has been diverted from a landfill.
Wow.
And thank you. And we were able to use that data to fund a school program that has turned into 6 elementary schools. And then we've also piloted an industrial compost facility on our transfer station. So I think it's just a couple examples of how a different county can operate.
It's different, and yet it feels connected to the point Jeremiah was making, which is there may not be one pathway to getting this work done. Maybe you don't have a goal, but you're doing lots of the things that communities that do have a goal do. I want to stick with you for a second because one of the strategies that you're using is to involve tons of nonprofit partners and other community groups. To talk a little bit about that kind of stakeholder engagement, that bottoms-up way of doing this work.
Yeah, nonprofits are an essential sector in our community, and governments and nonprofits go hand in hand. And I think one great example is of the Acoustic Trail, which is a greenway system that has been a long partnership between Henderson County and Conserving Carolina. And then me personally, I partner with Asheville Greenworks on a hard to recycle event that they have these well-established events that they've been doing in Buncombe County, and we're lucky enough to bring them down to Henderson County to do 2 events here. And I don't have the volunteer manpower that they do, so I would not be able to pull that off without them. And then that has sparked us, hopefully future pilot for a foam recycling project here. But thanks to the information from our hard to recycle events, we can use that to further fund a project.
Thank you. We heard a lot, Amber, in the last panel about flooding and the need for mitigation. What are the opportunities that remain?
The City of Asheville partnered with the National Environmental Modeling and Analysis Center here at UNCA in 2018 to identify Asheville's climate threats. And of course, flooding is one of those threats. What we chose to do as a city is have that document adopted into part of Asheville's comprehensive plan, Living Asheville. And with the recent funds, yay, from the federal government for infrastructure, we're resurrecting that document and having a fresh view with fresh eyes. And we have new staff members and new partners to be looking through that again and updating our abilities to apply for grants. This work is very expensive, so as we all know. And so I think making sure that our climate resilience assessment is something that we look at often is going to help us address flooding. In addition to that, our office created a climate resilience resource guide that I think is something that we need to be talking about more. The thought process behind it is if every property owner puts forth some best management practices to address some of the climate threats that are identified through the climate resilience assessment, then collectively we build resilience as a city. This work isn't just for local government to do, it's for all of us to do. And so if you know that your property floods, for example, or you have a hill that doesn't have grass on it, and you know every time it rains, the sediment is running down, then this document provides you an opportunity to learn more about best management practices and easy, low cost to very expensive best management practices that you could do on your personal property, your business, and then in addition to that, obviously the city is wanting to work on our options to build resilience, whether that's addressing.
So I want to come back and talk a little bit about this, and I want to make sure that we get to this sort of maybe not inherent tension, but present tension between the domain of private property owners and then the community good. But I want to make sure that we get some questions from the audience. So Jeremiah, I'm going to ask you one question while the audience gets queued up. And the person who was dancing earlier, feel free to come back and ask your question first. So we've heard about resources, community partners, universities, the federal government. When you think about resources other than the $10 million check, what are the resources that you think have really made the difference in moving forward progress on the plan?
Well, a lot of them are in this room, right? As I mentioned, we're very fortunate to live in a place where, this is just a community that cares about the environment in a lot of ways. And I think Senator Mayfield really, mentioned this specifically, that people come here, and I'm one of them, 20 years ago, came here and went, wow, what an amazing place this is. And 20 years later, here I am with a wife, 2 kids, and a mortgage. And I'm not leaving. And, I think that's one of the things that draws people here. Mm-hmm. And because of that, there's an inherent sort of need for us to feel like we need to protect it.
So right? Anchoring, if in some ways.
Yeah, I think so. And so, I think when you have that, you have those types of folks that are going to put people in leadership positions that also mirror those values, right? And those people can make the decisions to give folks like us the resources we need to do the work.
Yeah, that's helpful, because I think in almost every community there'll be advocates, but there may not be culture, a culture that you are pointing to, and that makes a difference. Absolutely. First question, yes.
Hi, I'm Dawn Chavez. I'm the Executive Director of Asheville Greenworks, and the question I was going to ask earlier had to do with equity and impact, especially on vulnerable communities, but that was very well answered by Amber, so I have a different question for you all, mainly for Mr. LeRoy and Ms. Weaver. What role do you see urban forestry playing in sustainability in both our city and our county?
Sure thing. Thanks for asking that question, Dawn. I think what we in sustainability have been talking about as of late is carbon sequestration. Mm-hmm. And what does that mean? What does that look like with some of our aggressive climate goals? I think it is, I believe it's something that, I know it's something that the city is very interested in. The Urban Forestry Commission has been working over the years to encourage an urban forestry master plan for the city. And I think it goes back to the conversation around development as well. So multifaceted, thinking about development, thinking about the need to maintain our canopy cover, and also thinking about carbon. And what does this mean all together as a community as we're trying to also expand and thrive, mm-hmm. right? We heard that there are people that are moving here. And so how do we continue to do that? And they want to have 2
kids and have a mortgage.
That's right. That's right. And an electric vehicle.
So I do. So I'd actually like to kind of piggyback on that a little bit and put in a plug, if I can, because I do think it's really important. You mentioned your comprehensive plan. Buncombe County is actually just starting the process of our new comprehensive plan. It's a long-range view, and one of the major things we want to look at is, how do we develop? I mean, again, we care about this community, we see these issues, and we want the voices of our community to be a part of that planning process. So please, go to our website, get on the newsletter list, and show up to these meetings, and make your voices heard, because this comprehensive plan is going to really be a guiding document for how we move forward as a community. So it's a really good opportunity for folks like yourselves to participate in that process.
Thank you. Let's get another question in.
I'm Gerald Meyer. I'm a resident of the senior living community called Givens Estates in South Asheville. We are a nonprofit corporation, and we have a small solar array on the campus that feeds power to 2 buildings, and I think it's probably the first one in a senior living community of our style in North Carolina. My question is, what resources, not necessarily financial, but encouragement-wise and technical, can the Buncombe County and Asheville governments, maybe Henderson County, provide to nonprofit owners of property? You have many of them, housing being one of the big ones, but also churches and nonprofit groups that own buildings, to be electric neutral or provide their own power. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it's good timing actually for that kind of question, because we're currently looking at like the type of programming that we can provide to help people understand what their options are. So we've focused primarily, and again, this is just in the last couple of years, we focused primarily on the public sector because that's where, frankly, government has the most control, right? So counties are kind of uniquely positioned because we fund the school systems, Asheville City Schools, Buncombe County Schools, AB Tech. We handle their construction. We issue their debt for them, that sort of thing. So we've really primarily focused on how do we get the public sector to move forward, and that's where all these solar projects that I was referring to are going. But the next step for us is figuring out how do we do this within the community, and how do we provide those types of resources as well for folks like yourself and communities like yourself. I don't have a definitive answer for you. I mean, honestly, we're trying to develop those programs today, and one of them you saw.
Right.
It's the Blue Horizons Project. And the Blue Horizons Project is a collaboration of city, county, and Duke Energy, and the purpose of that is to provide resources for people. And like you said, it's not monetary resources, it's where can I find information on the tax credits available? Where can I get a list of qualified, solar installers that we know have kind of been vetted in our community, that sort of thing. So I think that's a really good starting point, and I don't know if you have any additional suggestions, but that's why we created that sort of collaborative group. Was we don't necessarily have the in-house capacity to start those programs ourselves, but that's where these nonprofit partnerships come in. As Christine was mentioning earlier, we partner with these groups to provide those resources for folks.
Let's take one final question. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Jack Parker. I live in South Asheville. And my question relates to both Asheville and Hendersonville. There's a lot of attention on the IPCC report that just came out that devoted a whole chapter of the report to methane emissions. And you mentioned about food waste. And so my question is, I'm concerned not only with efforts to reduce food waste going to a landfill, but also paper, which turns out paper is also degrading and producing methane. And so and I read where 40% of the municipal solid waste here is paper. So are there any efforts to reduce paper waste as well as food waste, and in addition to the composting?
So I'm going to have each of you respond to that question. It can be yes, no, I don't know. But you have a minute. Go.
All right, I'll go first. So I think we need to make recycling more accessible and easy. And when you have a trash bin, you need to have a recycling bin next to it. And I think we have different hauling structure in Henderson than Buncombe. So we don't have, carts, throughout Henderson County. That's something that we could definitely, maybe look at in the future. But making it easy and accessible. But I am really proud of our convenience center where anyone can go and recycle all their paper, and maybe even also targeting businesses and the schools. So one positive part of our composting programs with the school system is I also get to look at the recycling program to see how well they're doing. So that's one way we can reduce how much paper gets sent to our landfill, because we have a closed landfill in Henderson County, and we send about 15 to 30 tractor-trailer loads of trash down to South Carolina a day. And so that is another financial incentive that we are working on to not only conserve the landfill for future generations, but also save us hauling costs and our budget.
Right. So the whole point of this is to get everybody leaving feeling very positive but you only have 1 minute. Go.
You know, gas to energy. Gas to energy is something that's been around for an extended period of time, and that's capturing methane gas and putting it on the energy grid. The city of Asheville does not own and operate its own landfill. I'm very envious of Buncombe County. My previous county I worked in owned and operated a landfill, and there's lots of opportunities for a landfill. So I'll kick it over to Jeremiah.
Yeah, so I've got a minute and a half then. Our landfill gas to energy project is something, and I wish my solid waste director was up here to talk about it because it's such a cool project. But the gist of it, because of our time constraints, is that the methane gas that is created by our garbage goes into a generator, is converted to electricity, and goes back onto the power grid. And we've been running this for several years now. And so we actually have a power purchase agreement with Duke. They buy the energy from us. It's amazing. I also want to put in a plug for our new recycling coordinator because the county just hired a recycling coordinator within the last year. And I'm buying her an electric van, which is also very exciting for me. And we're using the power from that generator to power her van. So I'm closing the loop on all that. It's a very exciting project
High five,
for us.
I like it.
That's right.
Get
that's
it.
Right. So, thanks.
I started by saying what's going on in Asheville, and the answer was everything. Maybe it's what's going on in Buncombe County, everything. Jeremiah, Amber, Christine, thank you. We could have continued this conversation for hours, but Will's over there giving me the side eye.
Time to go.